Hello and welcome back. You know, about 6 years ago I was at my mum's house and I looked up and I saw a book up on the bookshelf, and it was Crash, a book called Crash by J.G. Ballard. I took it down and I started reading it, and it started a long-lasting obsession and appreciation for J.G. Ballard as an author. Crash is a book unlike anything else I've ever read. It's about a character who has a sexual fetish for car crashes and car crash victims. And it's also a book about society merging with technology. It's an insane book, and I love insane books. And that was the first step on my journey into the world of J.G. Ballard. Shortly after reading Crash, I started reading books like The Drowned World and Cocaine Nights, Empire of the Sun, The Burned World, The Crystal World, High Rise, and I also went on to read The Complete Stories of J.G. Ballard, volumes 1 and 2. I haven't read all of them, but I've read a lot of them. I've read a lot of the short stories, and most of them are amazing. I wanted to do this video today because even though J.G. Ballard was a well-established author, I think more people should be aware of his work because he had such a unique style. After reading his books, I soon realised that he had a very unique vision. All of his books, all the themes of his books are about societies falling apart and crumbling away, or civilizations merging with technology in some weird, obscene manner. Or a lot of his books have got tones of evolutionary biology in them, and a lot of his books are about architecture as well. You won't find anything else quite like it. A J.G. Ballard book is very unique in a lot of ways, and he's not for everyone. You might start reading Ballard and you might hate it. His style is not for everyone. It certainly isn't easy reading. If you like an easy book that you want to skim through quickly, Ballard isn't really the man for you. I would actually describe him as a kind of social scientist who carved out a career as an author. Imagine a social scientist whose main topic of interest was how human beings merge with each other, and whose main interest was like human psychology, who then went on to write some science fiction books. That's a good way to give you an idea of what his books are like. His books are like social science documents. I don't know, they're different. You can't call them science fiction. They look like science fiction from the outside, and they've got science fiction overtones, but they're not your average science fiction books, not by any means. And once you understand his real life as well, you kind of understand his work a little bit more. J.G. Ballard actually grew up in Hong Kong during the 1930s and the 1940s, and he actually witnessed World War II in Hong Kong, and he witnessed the bombing of Hong Kong. I think he even witnessed Hiroshima, the atomic bombs and stuff. So he actually witnessed, as a young child, he witnessed his society crumbling apart and falling away. And his story is actually spoken of in Empire of the Sun. Empire of the Sun is kind of semi-autobiographical. It's like his life story, but with a little bit of fiction thrown in. But once you understand that, once you understand where he came from, suddenly all of his books make sense. Books like The Drowned World and The Burned World and The Crystal World make more sense when you understand his background, because all of those books are about cities and societies crumbling away and just civilization as you know it falling apart. And that must have had such a strong impact on him as a child, that World War II experience, that he went on to write all of these amazing kind of dystopian books. I've enjoyed most of his books. However, I must say, not all of them have been good. I've read quite a few of his short stories, and I'd say I've enjoyed about 50% of them. And as for his novels, I recently read High Rise, which is one of his most famous books, and I actually didn't finish it. I got about halfway through and I kind of got bored. Not all of his writing is amazing. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything he's ever done is brilliant, but the books that are good are very, very good. And I'm putting this video together today to kind of give you a beginner's guide to J.G. Ballard, because if you pick up the wrong book, you might just think, what the hell is this, and then just throw it away and never read another book by him again. So this is my kind of beginner's guide to J.G. Ballard. I'll advise you to read 2 short stories. Sorry, the camera's blowing, it's a bit windy here at the moment. The camera's blowing left and right. I'm going to give you 2 short stories to read if you're interested in J.G. Ballard. And if you like what you read with these 2 short stories, I would then advise you to go on and read Crash, which I think is his best full-length novel. Alright, so the first short story is a story called Message from Mars. And it's about a team of astronauts who go up in a space shuttle to the moon. And they work for NASA as well. NASA is mentioned. And they land back at NASA headquarters on a big landing strip. There's a big crowd of people waiting for them, a big reception party. And all of a sudden, the doors just don't open. The astronauts just sit inside this shuttle. And all of the engineers and stuff are crowding around the ship thinking, what the hell's going on? And about an hour later, they're still in there. 6 hours later, they're still in there. All of the news crew are taking photos and stuff. And eventually, the astronauts just won't come out of the shuttle. They've been to the moon and back, but they won't come out. So they transport this shuttle into a big storage hangar, where a team of scientists and psychologists kind of try to communicate with them and study the ship, but they just can't get them to come out. And literally about a decade later, they're all still in this ship, but no one knows why. And eventually NASA actually moves premises, so the shuttle gets moved to a random warehouse owned by a private company, but they still won't come out. And then the private company goes bust, so the space shuttle just ends up in this random patch of land in the desert, and it's just left there with the astronauts still in it. This is like about 40 or 50 years on, and they're still in there. This space shuttle is old now, it's covered in rust, it's covered in graffiti, and it's actually turned into a tourist attraction. People actually pay money to go and look at this space shuttle, and the original astronauts are still in there. It is a bizarre story. It's a fascinating story, and it's typical Ballard, because it's a science fiction story, but it's more about the human psychology than it is about space. So I'd advise you to go and read A Message from Mars. Now, the other story I want to direct you to is called The Voices of Time. This is a short story from 1960, so it's very old, and it follows a neurosurgeon called Powers, who's slowly dying along with the rest of the world and the rest of the universe. And he tends to some animals and plants in a lab who have become mutated. There's like a chimpanzee who's extra intelligent. There's a spider who weaves webs that serves as a kind of external nervous system and a kind of inflatable brain. There's a tank full of fruit flies who actually make honey in honeycomb, like wasps. There's a frog that's got like a lead shell that it's developed to protect itself from radiation, and all of the cactuses around this lab have started growing gold on the outside of them as a kind of protective film. It's a bizarre story again. Now, all of these animals and plants have had their silent pairs activated. Everybody has got, not everybody, some plants and animals have got something called a silent pair, and it's like a pair of chromosomes or genes that are in your body, but they've got no purpose whatsoever. They have no impact on the growth of the individual or the development. And it used to be a big mystery, and I think it still might be. I haven't put much research into this, but all of these animals in this lab have had their silent genes activated by X-ray, and they've all developed these weird traits. And this character Powers, he's dying, and he visits a friend who lives in like a 7-story spiral house. And it's explained that this house was built by an eccentric millionaire mathematician, and the house is so complex that Powers once got lost in this house. He walked through the entrance, and within 2 minutes he got lost, and his friend had to come down and find him, and he was actually lost in a little cul-de-sac within the house, and it took him about half an hour for his friend to find him. The story is full of these little weird quirks and weird details, and the whole story has got this really like retro 1960s feel to it. And there's, in the story, Ballard mentions the Mercury 7, and up until I read this story I'd never heard of the Mercury 7, but they were a team of real astronauts, and they were actually the first men to go into space. So you can actually learn a lot from this story, and you actually need to read it more than once. I've read this story about 4 or 5 times now, and I still pick up new details every time I read it. I've learnt about the Mercury 7 by reading this story. I've learnt about the silent pair, and you know, without ruining the story too much, the main character actually ends up X-raying himself, activating his own silent genes, and he ends up being able to see time. He's driving down in between these big cliffs, and he can actually see and hear and feel time. The story is called The Voices of Time. Read these 2 stories, The Message from Mars and The Voices of Time. The best way to find these stories is to get the complete stories of J.G. Ballard, volumes 1 and 2. That's the best way to find them. And as I say, if you like these 2 stories, then move on to Crash, which I consider to be his best work, or at least his best full-length novel. Okay? As I say, Ballard is not for everyone, but if you do end up liking him, it will be the start of a long-lasting obsession, and he could become your new favourite author. Okay, so he's certainly one of my favourite authors. So I wanted to make this video today to kind of spread the word and get more people to read about him or read his books, because he died in 2009, and he used to be a very famous author, but nowadays I'm not sure whether he's as well known as he was. So there you go, that's my recommendation for the day. J.G. Ballard. Read those 2 stories and then move on to Crash. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my main website, jamesflynn.org. stay tuned. I'll be back with another video in about 2 weeks time or so. In the meantime, try and have a great day on this strange, peculiar rock we call Earth. Goodbye.